On behalf of ICICI Securities, we welcome you to the earnings call of ACC Limited. On the call, we have with us Mr. Neeraj Akhoury, CEO India, Lafarge Holcim, Mr. Sridhar Balakrishnan, MD and CEO of ACC, and Mr. Yatin Malhotra, CFO of the company. At this point of time, I will hand over the floor to management of the company, which will be followed by interactive Q&A. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Kripal. Good morning and a very warm welcome to all the participants to our first full year 2020 earnings call. Let me first start by wishing all of you a very, very happy, healthy and a safe 2021. Hope all your family members and friends are safe and healthy. We too at ACC continue to focus on the well-being of our employees and all our stakeholders. Health, cost and cash has been the key pillar of our strategy. At ACC, we have really demonstrated our resilience during these trying times. The investor presentation has been uploaded on the website, and I'm sure all of you would have gone through the same. What we intend doing now is quickly run through the deck and then open up the floor for question and answers. Just to start, if one were to go to slide number 5, ACC has actually been an iconic organization which has really played a stellar and a significant role in India's progress over the last few decades. We are also a responsible, purpose-driven organization, and we strongly believe in creating a confident future for all our stakeholders. We also have a very strong parentage from a Lafarge, in terms of Lafarge Holcim, whether it's in the area of product, whether it's in the area of technology, whether it's in the area of sustainability. We believe that our parentage helps us compete better in the marketplace and gives us a strong, sustainable, competitive edge to compete in the marketplace. We've always believed in sustainable value creation through scale and innovation. We have 17 operating cement plants. We have over 80 ready-mix concrete plants. While at an annual level, the capacity utilization is 72%. That's driven more by the lockdown during peak COVID times. But on a running basis, our capacity utilization is anywhere between 85 to 90%. As a responsible corporate citizen, we believe strongly in contributing to the society and ensuring that we leave the world a much better place, be it taking care of employees during COVID times, whether it's physical health or the mental health, or basically contributing to the community health, whether it's in terms of altering the attitude of the community towards health and hygiene, whether it's in terms of sanitization, whether it's in terms of masks. I think ACC has played a leading role in ensuring community development and focusing on the community. Even our CSR initiatives are basically focused towards addressing the issue of malnutrition and education. If one were to look at the environment, from an environmental standpoint, we are amongst the lowest CO2 emitting cement companies. Even if you look at our alternate fuels, we strongly believe that we need to be focusing on alternate fuels, we're focusing on blended cements, we're focusing on reducing the clinker factors and leveraging alternative sources of energy to ensure that the environment is a much better, we leave the environment much healthier than what it was. Whether it's in terms of leverage of usage of waste or whether it's in terms of clinker factor, ACC has always believed in contributing to the society and environment at large. We also believe in very strong governance. All of you know ACC. ACC has stood and will continue to stand for a very, very strong governance culture. As all of you know, ACC has been in existence since 1930s. It has a very strong legacy, a very strong equity. It is trusted by the entire ecosystem, whether it's our consumers, whether it's our customers, and we intend to leverage the same to grow responsibly. Our responsible growth is going to be backed by strong pillars of innovation, digitization, and sustainability. Apart from growing the core in our endeavor to become a building materials company, we are also focusing on concrete, and we are also looking at building new engines of growth, which is in the area of construction chemicals. A quick look at our footprint. ACC has a nationwide presence. We have our cement plants in over 12 states, and our we have RMX plants in over 17 states. We are a company which is well diversified, and we have a presence across all geographical locations. In terms of investments, as far as the brand is concerned, the whole objective is to retain the core identity of heritage and trust and to build on durability. But the idea is to make sure that we make the brand a lot more contemporary. So if you see all our initiatives, whether it's in terms of communication or whether it's in terms of digital or on-field presence during cricket matches, it is all geared towards retaining the old heritage of ACC and making the same a lot more contemporary. If one were to look at slide 12, I will not dwell much on it. ACC as a company which has received awards across a wide spectrum of business, whether it's in terms of energy efficiencies, whether it's in terms of corporate excellence, whether it's in terms of the kind of annual reports that we have, whether it's in terms of energy efficiency. And if you see the awards, it spans locations, whether it's our plant at Burger, whether it's our plant at Wadi, or whether it's our plant at Jammu. I will now hand over the mic to Yatin, who will take us through the performance review for the quarter ending. Over to you, Yatin.
Thank you, Sridhar. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the call. I'll talk about the performance. I'm sure all of you would have read it through. Starting with quarter 4, we believe we have delivered a strong quarter in terms of our operating performance. Cement volume, we were almost flat versus where we were in the same quarter of last year. RMX, we clearly see the recovery happening gradually. We are roughly 80% of where we were in a pre-COVID era. On a net sale basis, we went up roughly 2%, driven by both mix actions that we have been taken on our product portfolio and also the pricing actions. EBITDA, we delivered a jump of 30% versus where we were last year, and with an EBIT margin expansion of 380 basis points versus last year. So what we have reported for the quarter is a PAT growth of roughly 73% at 472 crores. And moving to the full year performance, with a net sales degrowth of 12%, there's a jump in absolute EBITDA by 3%, which is at 2484 crores. And at a PAT level, we are at 1430 crores, which is a jump of 3.8%. On the key levers on margin and cash flow, I think we have spoken, Sridhar also referred briefly about that. The first and foremost is definitely the product mix optimization, and in addition to that, the cost efficiency measures that we have been driving under the flagship project Parvat. I think all of them are coming, and that is leading to the uplift in margin for us. The year has been good for us in terms of working capital management, and that has led to decently strong cash flow deliveries for us. And there have been launches that we have done in RMX space, especially in the value-added spaces. Just to call out on sustainability in terms of the carbon emissions, we have actually closed the year with less than 500 kgs per ton. And as Sridhar mentioned, our focus on digital brand campaigns continues. So if you were to look at the overall delivery at an EPS level for the quarter, against the 14.6 rupees to a share, we have delivered at 25, which is a jump of 73%. And on a full year basis, against 73.3, we deliver 76 rupees to a share. And moving to the income statement for cement, if you were to break the numbers in a per ton basis, we can see very clearly a jump of rupees 246 per ton at an EBITDA level for cement, which is a healthy 42% uplift versus where we were last year. And on a full year basis, from 758 we went to 925, which is a jump of roughly 22% versus what we did last year. The next few slides talk about a little more detail. We can quickly talk about that. Slide 19 talks about our overall sales volume performance. We have spoken for the full year, we went down 11.6, so flattish in the quarter. On a net selling price basis, I think there is a significant jump of 8% in the NSP for the quarter, and on a full year basis, it is 2.4% versus the same period last year. On a material consumption basis and on other cost levers also, I just want to put a caveat here that, there are impacts of inventory movement. So Q4 is not a true reflection, but if we see the full year bars, raw material, we can see a reduction of 11% from 519 to 462 to a ton. Power and fuel, we can clearly see a reduction of 6.5% from 1046 to 978. Moving to freight and forwarding, we see a reduction of almost 3% at 1270 rupees a ton, and employee is an outlier basically on account of volume absorption, because we all know it was a year which everyone was impacted by pandemic, and that is impacting the overall absorption of employee cost. On the other expenses, I think we can clearly see a significant reduction of roughly 10% from 774 to 698. So that's about our overall financial performance. I'll hand it over back to Sridhar to take us to the deck.
Thank you, Yatin. This is in terms of the demand-supply dynamics. India is the second largest cement producer in the world, but if one were to look at the per capita consumption of cement, it is significantly lower than a lot of other countries. So this low per capita consumption of cement offers significant headroom for growth. Now this, coupled with the government impetus on low-cost housing, roads, infra projects, metros, etc., ensures that at a category level, cement is poised for good growth in the medium term. If you look at it, India also enjoys the demographic shift, and whether it's in terms of infra, whether it's in terms of low-cost housing, we strongly believe cement as a category is likely to grow well over the next few years. Now, key drivers of one is, if you look at affordable housing, the government's vision of housing for all by 2022 driver, especially for cement companies who are big in the retail sector. And overall, if one would even look at it, whether it's low-cost housing, infrastructure, roads, metros, etc., I think the next few years portends well for cement as a category. If one were to look at the key strategic priorities, our focus was strong on health, cost and cash, and this has basically enabled us to come out healthy, not only as individuals, but as a collective. When I say collective, I mean the organization. So whether it's the work done by the business resilience team or the safety teams or members of the team who are in the plants and various sales locations, I think they've done a fantastic job in ensuring that all our members, whether it's our employees or the communities nearby, stayed healthy and safe. I think the other thing which we did this time is focus on the holistic well-being of our employees, because our endeavor is to ensure that we take care of all our stakeholders. In terms of cost, Yatin has covered it in detail. So is the case with cash. I think it's been a good job that's happened this year in terms of managing working capital, especially during trying COVID times. From a futuristic standpoint, we believe that we are a purpose-driven organization who believe in responsible growth. Now, growth is in terms of, one, expanding capacity. It's in terms of investing to enhance profitability. It's to invest to drive and build new engines of growth. And most importantly, to accelerate ESG across our areas of operation, whether it's in terms of sustainability, whether it's in terms of good governance, or whether it's in terms of working towards betterment of society. A quick one in terms of capacity expansion. All of you would know our new plant in Sindri, 1.4 million tons, has already started producing cement. It's working. It's just started producing cement in the month of January. Our Ameta project is on, which is basically 3 million tons of clinkering. So if you look at Ameta and Sindri, it's 3 million tons of clinkering and roughly about 6.2 million tons of cement. So I think this should really enable us to really grow profitably and responsibly over the coming next few years. In terms of key business enablers, as I discussed earlier, technology is going to be a backbone where we are going to leverage our parentage. We're going to leverage the overall portfolio that Lafarge Holcim has, whether it's in terms of digitization of the front end, whether it's in terms of the transport analytics center, which is the logistics arm, whether it's in terms of TIS or PAC, which is manufacturing. The idea is to ensure that we digitize all aspects of the value chain to enhance value. So if you look at logistics, as we covered last year, we managed to reduce costs. We've leveraged TAC, which is the Transport Analytics Center, to drive safety of our drivers and to also derive cost efficiencies. We have been focusing on multiple levers, whether it's direct dispatches, mix optimization, or lead optimization. So this is a journey, and what we've achieved last year is it's just a milestone in our journey of becoming a lot more cost competitive over the years. In terms of ESG, as I said earlier, we strongly believe in the adage and the principles of responsible growth, whether it's in the area of environment. As you can see, in terms of carbon emission per ton of cement, we are possibly the lowest in India at 493 kg per ton of cement. Even if you study our reports, there has been a significant reduction of specific carbon emissions over the last few years, whether it's increase in terms of green energy, whether it's in terms of water consumption. The other important thing I would like to call out here is this year we focused on not only health of employees during COVID, but our strong focus on safety continues. Testimony to that is the fact that we've had no on-site fatality this year. We've also invested in our members. We've leveraged digital to value add and develop skill in our members. Our CSR team has done an extremely good job in ensuring that our community stays safe, whether it's altering the attitude towards health and hygiene, whether it's producing masks or sanitization. So we are very clear that we believe in being a responsible corporate citizen with very, very high standards of governance, with ESG being the bedrock. As I covered earlier, sustainability is a key agenda for us. It's the backbone, and that is and will continue to be our backbone in our agenda of driving responsible growth. So even if I were to look at sustainability growth, we have an ambitious plan from a 2030 standpoint. I'll just quickly touch upon one or two points. If one were to look at it, our endeavor is to ensure that we reduce carbon dioxide emission to about 400 kgs per ton by 2030. At least we've started well over the last couple of years. There's been progress there, and we're confident that we'll reach that. Whether it's in the area of carbon dioxide emission, whether it's in the area of circular economy where we are leveraging waste as alternative fuel, whether it's in the area of environment or community, we are very, very clear that we need to drive this very strongly in our endeavor to be a responsible corporate citizen. So as I said, I've just called this out earlier, we strongly believe in promoting a safe, inclusive and a vibrant culture. So apart from our learning imperatives, we also have a strong talent review succession planning program. We have a program called Boots on Ground. The whole idea there is to focus on employee engagement across levels. It's also to ensure that people stay safe across various locations. So as I called out earlier, the idea is to deliver responsible growth and by delivering a wide, meaningful impact, whether it's in the area of, as you called out, community, whether it's in the area of sustainability or whether it's in the area of governance. Some of the facts are there in slide number 43. And the other point which I want to call out again is we believe in the best standards as far as governance is concerned. All of you are aware of the esteemed board that we have. If one were to look at it, ACC has been, will be and continue to be known as an organization with excellent governance standards. In terms of COVID, I think I covered this earlier. Not only did we take steps to ensure that our own employees stay safe and healthy, we've also taken steps to ensure that the local communities in and around our areas of operation stay safe, whether it's in terms of altering the attitude of community members towards health and hygiene, whether it's in terms of sanitization of villages, or whether it's in terms of producing and delivering masks. So all of you have the presentation and you have the list of all the directors, and that's all from my side. The floor is open for questions now.
Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin the question and answer session. Anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and 1 on their touchtone telephone. If you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, you may press star and 2. Participants are requested to use handset while asking questions. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. The first question is from the line of Indrajit from CLSA. Please go ahead.
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much for the opportunity and thanks a lot for organizing a conference call. I want to understand more on the cost and cost efficiency side. So how much of the benefits of Project Parvat have you already exploited and what more can come? And similarly on the master supply agreement with Ambuja, how much more can we see in terms of benefits that will come from that side?
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for your question. I think, we have stated earlier that when we started with an ambition of chasing a number of rupees 200 to a ton, when we stated this a while back. I think we are very well on this path of improvement. It's a gradual journey and there is no clear start or end state, and neither can we say we have reached a stage and we are over with it. We are progressing on every single lever as I presented and we spoke about it in our call. By and large, the input costs have been a pressure point for us for the previous few quarters. We are handling that situation and we are trying to extract more as we talk. So if I were to state a number, I think I would not hazard a guess on that, but I can tell you that we started with a target of 200 and we are going to chase much more than that.
Actually, just to add to what Yatin said, if you see the slides, they cover it basically in various elements. So, but just to reassure all of you that cost competitiveness is a key agenda for us, and we will continue to not only invest in growth but also we will continue to invest in initiatives which make us far more cost competitive.
I think you had another question around MSA and how we can leverage that more.
See, this is just the tip of the iceberg. If you look at it, this has been a bit of an extraordinary year. We've not seen a full year, but I think the start has been strong in terms of leveraging synergies, in terms of maximizing capacity utilization for both the organizations. There is a lot more that needs to be done, whether it's in the area of footprint optimization, whether it's in the area of having the right warehouse locations, and there is an entire value chain that needs to be exploited. we at ACC and at Ambuja believe that this is going to be an initiative which is certainly going to help us in our journey. It's one of the elements which is going to help us in our journey of becoming far more cost competitive.
Sure, that's really helpful. My second question is again on cost on the power and fuel side. So with the increase in coal and petcoke prices, how much of that has already reflected in our numbers, and what is the kind of cost inflation that you're expecting in the following quarters?
Again, it's not a binary number that how much has come in. Inventory does play a role, but I can tell you that we were not very high on inventory. So I would say a decent amount of proportion has already come in, but it's a gradual thing that is evolving for us. So, that's where I would have gone to.
And any kind of fuel mix change we are doing, or we are happy with the kind of mix that we have right now?
No, I think that's a constant journey. It's a journey of ensuring that we build capability in our plants to switch between various kinds of fuels based on the price of each fuel element at that particular point in time. So that's one area which we are working on now.
And we have demonstrated in the past that we have moved basis how the market has, moved, so just to optimize the mix. And I think that is again something that we respond. Very mindful that we should not be knee-jerk. At the same time, we should be structured as we pursue these things.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for your answers.
Thank you. Next question is from the line of Rashi Chopra from Citigroup. Please go ahead.
Thank you. So just continuing on cost, what has been the lead distance during this quarter versus the prior quarter?
What is the?
Lead distance.
We'll have to check that out.
To be honest, we don't have it handy. Maybe we can come back.
We can double back to you and get back to you with the lead numbers.
But I think just to answer, where this question will finally go, Sridhar mentioned, optimizing our warehouses footprint and the network is a priority for us. So it can be a prompt to number and we can get back to you on that, but that reduction is top of our mind. So that is the agenda that we are looking at very strongly.
Okay. And on the balance capacity that's supposed to come, is that expected sometime in the second part of next year? Is that the timeline?
Okay. So Sindri is already operational as we speak. It started producing in January. The Ameta capacity will come into play sometime during quarter two, which is the April to June quarter of next year, which is half one of next year.
Okay, so and any more expansions beyond what you've announced yet?
So I am not in a position to give you any forward-leading answers. It's a sensitive question, but I just want to assure you that we are committed towards growth.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Next question is from the line of Vivek Maheshwari from Jefferies. Please go ahead.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Yeah, hi, Vivek.
Hi. A couple of questions. So first, continuing with the previous participants. So on the capacity side, while I understand you can't, guide about something which has not been announced, but following a growth-oriented budget, is there as in the union budget, is there a change in, thought process given that, the fiscal deficit target of, 4.5 itself has been pushed to F26? So in that context, given the capex cycle and the expectations on the infrastructure build out, do you think that there will be a case to in fact announce a capacity expansion soon? That's first part of the question.
Yeah. So we've always believed in the India growth story. COVID might have been an aberration, but we had absolutely no doubt about the India story. As I had called out in the earlier presentation, India as compared to the rest of the world is relatively under-indexed as far as infra is concerned. That itself offers enough headroom for growth. And the government has always been committed towards low-cost housing, towards the development of infra. It has basically given it a shot in the arm as far as these elements are concerned. So basis all these, we've always been very clear that India is a growth story. And if you look at, barring the COVID year, if you look at the last 3-4 years, at a secular standpoint, the cement industry has shown good growth. It's shown good, healthy growth. So to that extent, is our view of India as a growth story changed? Certainly not. We are very, very clear it was, is and will continue to be a growth story. But the recent budget just gives us an impetus. To possibly see what we can do. It's difficult for me to comment on the future, but this is more of an impetus, and it just lends credence to our own belief that India is a growth market and will continue to be one.
Got it. And the second thing, specifically to Neeraj, after you took charge at ACC and now at Ambuja, we have seen hectic changes in ACC as well as Ambuja. Can you just talk about, your thought process from a next, from a medium-term perspective and the journey so far, and how are you thinking about, balancing out on the growth versus the efficiency part? I have seen parents, comment in one of the calls where they have said that, they aren't particularly happy with, the gap that ACC Ambuja have with UltraTech Cement, and we have seen some bit of that being bridged. But how has been the journey, and what are you thinking from a medium-term perspective?
Okay, so let me. I will not be in a position to comment. I won't be in a position to comment on Ambuja because the results are not yet out. But I can only talk about ACC. Two aspects as I covered earlier. We are very, very clear that India is a growth market. We are committed to driving volume growth, and we are also committed to investing in terms of reducing our cost gap with competition. So I think these are the three things. As far as how the year has gone, I think this year has been a bit of it's been a very, I don't know how to describe it, has been a very unique year in terms of this pandemic. So the focus has in this year been on health, cost and cash, and I'm sure that would be the case across the overall spectrum. But as you can see, as soon as things return to normal, we quickly announced our growth projects, whether it is Ametha or whether we quickly got back to getting Sindri, accelerated the Sindri project. We quickly announced Ametha, and we are really working hard towards executing it in real fast time. So I think it's very difficult to comment on the year gone by because the focus was fundamentally on health, cost and cash given the pandemic. But going forward, I just want to reassure you that we are committed to growth, and we are also committed to investing in terms of bridging the cost gap with competition.
Sure. Thank you very much. Wishing you all the best, and thank you for hosting this call. All this while we have been wondering whether, you care about the investors. So thank you, and we do hope that you will do it on a quarterly basis.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next question is from the line of Gunjan Prithyani from JP Morgan. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, team, for taking my questions. And let me also thank you all for doing this call. Really long awaited. Totally appreciate it and hope to hear more regularly on this platform. I had basically two questions. Firstly, again, a follow-up on this expansion, and I'm not asking you to give any timelines or, how we will approach growth, but more a philosophy on expansions, because having, looking at this for a while, I mean, normally we have waited to hit a capacity constraint, and then that's when we start looking at more expansion. I'm just wondering, has there been any change to that approach, that we are now more, pro growth? We would try to add before, we hit that constraint, because I mean, you've been emphasizing that you believe in India growth story, then why not add beforehand? So maybe, if you can share a philosophy, if there has been a change versus past, then we can then look at this company, embarking on expansion before hitting a constraint. That's the first question from my side.
So I see again, because of the sensitivity of the question, I'm not in a position to give you a response in terms of what our future expansion plans are. I can only assure you that we are committed towards leveraging the growth opportunity that India offers in the near to medium term to long term future. So giving you an answer in terms of what our expansion philosophy is right now would be a forward-leading question, and that's a little sensitive in nature.
Okay, sure. But there is no limestone constraint as such for us to embark on regular expansions. I mean, is that any worry at all if I think about next 5-10 years from this company's perspective?
No, not really, no.
I think, Gunjan, that's a part and parcel of business. We'll solve it as
we face it, yeah, correct.
Okay, got it. The second question, if I can ask, is around capital allocation. Again, we do continue to carry a significant amount of cash on balance sheet, and the expansions that we have, which we've laid out, can comfortably be funded by the internal accruals, or maybe we'll still generate more cash flow. What is the thought process around that? Would you look to take back the dividend payouts higher? Is there a way you pay out special dividend like the parent did? Any thought process on capital allocation will help.
So, Gunjan, on the capital allocation pieces, I think, you're right, we have decent amount of cash on our balance sheet. But you can also see, as Sridhar has mentioned, and you rightfully asked, do we have growth plan? I think we already announced one, and these are all pretty, capital consuming projects. We would want to keep ourselves ready to embark on organic growth opportunities. We would also want us to be ready if we happen to lay our hands on an inorganic growth opportunity. So, we are still not out of the volatile times of COVID. There was a point in time when this cash was, said to be the king. It is still the king. So this is where we are. I think the cash belongs to the shareholders, and it is our responsibility to invest it prudently, and that is what we will do.
Okay, so if I get that right, it is more you want to preserve this for growth for now, because you're clearly seeing more opportunities, or you would look to expand. Okay, just last question from my side. On the capex, if you can give us some sense on what is going to be the annual capex, and given some of these emission related targets that you've laid out, which are clearly really commendable and very aggressive, what is the thought process around WHR investments? What kind of capacities we are looking at in terms of WHR or any green sources of energy? That's pretty much from my side. Thank you.
So I can make a few observations on this question, Gunjan. Point number one, if you were to look at our quarter 4 capex outflow itself, it is more than 500 crores. Clearly a step in the direction of putting the money behind what we believe is right. That is on account of Ameta, that is on account of certain, the energy projects. We've already announced WHRS projects in a couple of our plants, and that is one big agenda on our table, and we will continue to invest. You will be, I think, when we announce it, you will be made aware of it. So as we sit and as management and look at what we need to invest at, rightly what Sridhar mentioned, growth is topic number 1, efficiency is topic number 2, sustainability is a topic on the table, very much on the table. So it's a cumulative deployment of funds that we will do towards all the 3 priorities.
Okay, got it. Thank you so much. I'll join back with you.
Thank you very much. Next question is from the line of Gaurav Rateria from Morgan Stanley. Please go ahead.
Fine. While a lot of initiatives you've taken on Project Parvat, MSA, it's visible in the full year numbers. If I look at the other expenses for the quarter, it is still higher on a YOY basis on a per ton basis. So some of these benefits are not visible in the current quarter numbers. So should one be benchmarking the full year numbers on per ton going forward? Should one be looking at the current quarter numbers as a benchmark? How should one think about it?
So, Gaurav, I think to read too much into the quarter would not be the best way to read the numbers, just because, quarter on quarter you had inventory movements of last year, which is 19 quarter versus 20 quarter. So, and we all understand numbers, that you have consumption basis production divided by sales. So, inventory has a major role to play. So I would not read too much. I think directionally, if you have to pick up the numbers, I think the annual numbers would be a much more fair reflection of performance. And just to answer your question on other expenses, if you go, we have, put out a note this time, the other expenses line item has a charge of 129 crores on account of certain discounting that we have done for the government receivables, incentives receivables. So that is a one-off which you should not read too much in.
Okay, so I was talking about the other expenses X of that one-off, but okay.
So here I would just say that, read the full year trend, that is a much more real reflection of that number.
Okay, sir. Secondly, on the benchmarking of cost side, if you could highlight some areas where we are still seeing a lot of efficiency which could come in. Is it more on the distribution side? Any specific initiative, maybe like on more direct distribution versus what it is today, that would be helpful.
So I think we believe that there is enough room across the entire value chain, just to answer your question, whether it's in terms of WHRS, green power, in terms of other efficiencies that we have in the manufacturing space. Also in terms of logistics, there's a lot that needs to be done, whether it's in terms of footprint optimization, lead reduction through optimum warehouse locations, geomix optimization. So I think there is a lot. So it's what we are looking at is the entire value chain, working on the entire value chain to extract value from it. So it's just not one aspect or one functional element of the business.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Next question is from the line of Raj Kiran Gandhi from SBI Mutual Fund. Please go ahead.
Hi, thanks for the opportunity.
Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Gandhi, but may we request you to speak a bit louder as your voice is a bit low.
Hi, thanks for the opportunity. In your annual reports, you've been steadily mentioning about, last 2 years about maximum of your leases expiring in the 2028-2030 period. So, what's the company's thought process as you on that from a planning perspective?
No, so I think if one were to look at it, I think that is something which is going to hit the entire industry. So I think we will comply with the law and take necessary steps in the right direction to ensure that we have adequate limestone to manage our volumes and growth. I don't think that's an area which we really need to be worried about. I think that's an area which we are very, very conscious of and we are working on.
Okay. And in terms of Project Parvat, if you could just highlight, you've ordered up to 25 megawatt, but what is the identified WHR potential? Maybe the timelines and all could be a bit sensitive, but just in terms of potential, what?
Okay, so let me not give you a forward-looking statement, but some key indicators you've already seen the WHRS announcement for Kaimur and Jamul. We also have other kilns where we are evaluating the possibility of WHRS. That apart, even in Ameta and our project in WHRS, we have I think a 14 or a 15 megawatt WHRS plan. So these three are already tabled, and I'm not in a position to really tell you what are the other plans that we are looking at, because this is sensitive information. But I'd like to assure you that we have a comprehensive power strategy in place, which is a part of our Parvat journey, to ensure that one, we optimize our power costs, and second, also we make our business a lot more sustainable.
Okay, sure. And any specific, in Project Parvat outside of WHR and MSA, any specified or quantified point you can just highlight in terms of cost potential?
It's the entire value chain. As I said, it's the entire value chain. Yeah. It's not just one element.
Large Parvat is a flagship, project that we are doing, and it is knocking off costs across line items. We happen to talk about the big ones, but we all understand, it has to come across the line items.
Okay. Sure. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Next question is from the line of Nitin Arora from Axis Mutual Fund. Please go ahead.
Hi, sir. Thanks for taking my question. Just wanted to understand, you said India is a growth story and all, but generally the gap between the volume growth, and it could be a short-term question, but the direction I wanted a little longer term, the gap between ACC and Ambuja's volume growth is widening a lot. I mean, when we look at, let's say, even this quarter performance for ACCs and versus other companies which are growing in way higher than double digit, even Ambuja is gaining across markets, ACC is losing out completely.
Yeah.
How we should look this, going forward, number one. And number two, what is the reason behind taking impairment of this plant in Tamil Nadu? If there is no issue in terms of limestone and all, why suddenly, impairment happens in a cement plant of your company? That's my second question.
Okay, so let me take the first question. As I called out, in the last quarter, or by and large in most quarters, ACC has been operating at very, very high capacity utilization, and that is something which I had called out earlier. Our capacity utilization is possibly the highest in our industry, which is what is leading to the relative volume underperformance. But as I called out, by let's say mid next year, or let's say our Sindri plant is already operational, and by mid next year we will be having roughly about 6.2 million tons of grinding capacity, which would see us getting back onto the growth track. On the impairment piece, Jatin, would you like to handle that?
Yeah. So Nitin, on the impairment, it is an evaluation of the future cash flows of the plant versus the book value that we were carrying in our books. Now, you are right, the quantity of limestone is that an issue? I don't think that is an issue. But there are two things that, merit attention regarding Madhukkarai. Number one is the quality of limestone. That is a little bit of a concern. And second, the process that we run in that plant till the clinkering stage, that is something that we need to work on. So right now, if you look at the future projections, future cash flows, they do not justify the book value, the carrying value in our books, and that is the reason as a prudent accounting, conservative approach, we have taken that impairment in our books. Having said that, maximizing returns from this plant is high on our table. We are exploring all options to make sure that we maximize the returns that we generate from this asset.
Sir, sorry, the cash flow or the future impairment being taken, as you said, if limestone is an issue, or let's say the quality of limestone is an issue, Can you elaborate how much volume loss we will have and in which market? Because it's a huge impairment, it's not a small impairment. If you can quantify the respect to the volume per se, and which market you will lose out. Because you just added 1.57 or let's say 1.4 million tons, and 50-60% goes out, then it's almost a negligible net addition on capacity. So if you can clarify that. Thank you.
Listen, this plant, Madukrai, operates in a very different geography versus the capacity that we have added. So, do we look at losing the market or the volume in that market? I think I would not want to answer that question. Definitely, we have to be aggressive as a brand and we have to retain our market share and grow it. So, it is, I would say, the cash flows generation, these are all accounting simulation, the modeling that you do to make sure that you have a clear outlook of the future cash flows. And that is what was compared with the book value when we did that transaction. I would want to close it at that.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you. Next question is from the line of Chetan Sehgal from Templeton. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, Sridhar. I think congratulations on the good set of numbers.
Thank you, Chetan.
There was another question as well on the EBITDA bridge with the best-in-class EBITDA which are being reported. So you already are operating at higher capacity utilization than the industry, and you're making all these efforts to cut costs and improve investing in power, etc. So by when do you expect to actually catch up? With the best-in-class EBITDA per ton in the industry. So is there a roadmap to it, and are there well-defined targets along the way?
See, we have a very aggressive journey planned out for the next few years. So it will be very difficult for me to really comment on when we will be able to bridge the gap. But rest assured that we are taking all steps to ensure that our EBITDA margins improve significantly and we bridge the gap with competition. I can't give a date, I can't give a year to it. It's a very dynamic, fluid piece. Too many variables.
I mean, the question is, does it happen in a 5-year horizon? I mean, is that something which is on your radar screen of planning?
Yeah. We are looking at bridging the gap in the 5-year horizon. Yeah.
And you've got specific. All these targets are very internal and very specific, and therefore you think that there is a potential to actually do that.
Yes.
Okay. And so there was one more question which comes on this royalty issue which has come in. So interestingly, this time I think the brand fee is for a 2-year period. So one is to understand what is the rationale for just going for a 2-year period, and the second is, wouldn't it be better to actually link it to the EBITDA margins rather than just do it on the base of turnover, so that the incentives are there in place to actually affect EBITDA improvements?
I think, Chetan, the fees that we pay to our parents is for the entire spectrum of the technical know-how that we take from them. We take pride in being a part of the LH Group. It's a fair reflection of the value that we generate being a part of the family. Actually, this is much lesser than the value that we generate for being the part of the family. I think linking into some arbitrary numbers like sales or EBITDA, I don't think that's an industry practice. I don't think that is fair in the way of treating such agreements. And to your question of why 2 years, I think we will see as it comes.
Yeah, it's very dynamic, so we'll take it as it comes.
So we are moving as it comes, and we will see when the 2 years comes and what we do. So that's it.
Right, because that has just created more uncertainty. So when you speak in the market and speak to analysts, generally, this just brings about more uncertainty that what happens 2 years in. 2 years is quite a short period, in the life of a company. So that's the reason why we were thinking that what's the rationale for looking at it from a 2-year point of view rather than a much longer horizon.
We hear you, Chetan.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Next question is from the line of Swagato Ghosh from Franklin Templeton. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I have 3 quick questions. First is, there have been a few amendments proposed in the mining law recently. I wanted to understand your reading of those amendments and whether that changes our merger plan, if at all.
No, so as we stand today, there is no plan of any merger. We are first waiting for that to become law. So that's where I would leave it at. But in terms of merger, as things stand today, we are and will continue to be two distinct, separate, public listed entities.
Okay, but your reading of the amendments, does it actually reduce the cost of doing a merger?
We have not gone to that depth in terms of reviewing that, so we would not want to comment on that.
Yeah.
Okay. Second question is, sir, on MSA and Project Parvat. Firstly, if you can just give some clarity on the MSA related volumes for maybe CY20 and what is our eventual target, and what was in CY19. I think it was not a big number, but what has it grown to in CY20? That would be very helpful. And what is our ballpark eventual target on MSA? And also on MSA and Project Parvat combined, who are probably the 2-3 key people in the organization who are driving this? That would give us, as shareholders, that would give us some comfort.
I think on the people, you have heard me and Sridhar talking for the last 30 minutes on Parvat. So, we lead this activity as a flagship thing for the company, and the entire organization, I can say, is joined in this project. So, I think that is a very simple question. To the point of, how much we have done in MSA, what are the volumes and what is the end state, I do not think, when you make progressions, you have end state defined. As Sridhar has mentioned multiple times, these are, things of journeys. So 2020 versus 2019, the numbers are significantly higher is what I can put on the table. And we are chasing a even significantly bigger number in 2021, and we will see how it plays out, All the companies are adding capacities. The dynamics are not static. They are constantly changing. And we will always have to find the best ways of optimizing the value creation for the shareholders of both the organizations, which should be incremental, value creative to the bottom line. That's the only mission that we, use when we actually evaluate MSA in both options.
Okay, but at any point in time, will we get some update on the volumes? Like, I understand that it is higher, but what it is tracking at, so that we can also track it as shareholders at different points in time.
I think when Ambuja has closed their annual results, maybe you will have a little more insight into that.
Okay, great. And are we taking help of any external consultants on these MSA and Parvat?
Consultant for what?
For executing these two initiatives.
Shogata, we really believe that we can handle it.
Okay, great. And one last just booking question. This inorganic plans that you just referred to, are there any specific gaps we are looking to fill, or we'll just evaluate any opportunities whenever something comes in the market?
I think the second one is what I would take. I think Sridhar very clearly stated, the mission is for us to grow in India, and in every single opportunity we would be willing to explore. We would not want to comment more on this point.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Shoghat.
Thank you. Before we take the next question, we would like to remind participants to restrict your questions to one per participant, as we have several questions in the queue. Our next question is from the line of Ritesh Shah from Investec. Please go ahead.
Hi, sir. Thanks for the opportunity. Sir, my first question is on diversification. On one of the slides, you have indicated waterproofing, tile adhesives, and RMC. Just wanted to know what is the management's thought process on this segment, and is it possible to relate this revenue number from this segment versus the discount and marketing spends what we publish in the annual report, because those numbers seem to be moving up faster than probably the top line number. If you could provide some details over here, that would be great. That's the first question.
Okay, so I think first is that we strongly believe that RMX, if you are barring the year 2020 where RMX or the ready mix business was impacted severely because of COVID relative to cement, but we strongly believe in that RMX or concrete is going to be the way forward. So that's one business which we plan to continue to invest in, whether it's in terms of plants or whether it's in terms of products, whether it's in terms of value-added products, whether it's in terms of sustainable products. So that's one area where we strongly believe that that's going to be an engine of growth for us. As far as the specialty chemicals is concerned, it's a fledgling business right now. It's a very, very small business. So it'll be really premature to comment on that business as of now, but we believe that is a business which hopefully in times to come should be a multiplier for us.
Right. Sir, would it be possible for you to give some quantification on RMC numbers or bulk cement terminal numbers, because that's the way forward that you are saying?
So in terms of performance, I think that's
So we mentioned, Ritesh, that we are roughly 80% of where we were in the pre-COVID era. RMC is a very different domain of business, much more. So this is where we are, gradually recovering, I would say, and we should be back in full might, hopefully in 2021.
Yeah.
Okay. Sir, my second question is both short-term as well as long-term. There is a one-off of 129 crores. You did indicate that one should just overlook it. It is something which is a one-off. But sir, my question over here is when we allocate capital, how important is this particular state incentives? I'm sure that for the incremental capex, what we have announced 6.2, 2.7 cement clinker, there will be certain incentives. So just wanted to have some comfort on how critical is incentives as a variable when we look at ROC thresholds. And from a balance sheet perspective, how much is the outstanding that the state governments owe to us, if at all there is any risk over here? That's the second question.
So, Ritesh, I think number one, incentives are an important piece for us. And we have a decent amount of incentives still in our books, so it is significant. You can very clearly see in our balance sheet. Point number two, when we evaluate projects, incentives are not the make or break of any project evaluation. Our projects are strong on merit, irrespective of incentives or not. Definitely, incentives are the icing on the cake. That is actually the whole idea. And we also see and we really appreciate these steps various state governments and central government is taking to incentivize, setting up more projects in plants and industry. So it is an important consideration set, but it is not a make or break point, I would say. And just to elaborate a little more on the 129 charge that we took, again, we do not as an organization see any risk whatsoever to this amount. It is for us sovereign debt. It is something that we are due to receive from various state governments on account of declared policies, industrial policies in place. What we have done only is the fact that we see that the money coming in at a larger time period than, more rather than immediate. So we have discounted it for the time value of money because if the same amount of money comes in, let's say 5 years down the line, we have discounted that element of the time value of money and that is the entry that we have taken in the books. I hope I made myself clear with this.
Sure. So my third, I think I'll spill over to one more question. Mr. Akhoury, you have time and again indicated that our focus is on market share and not on capacity share. And you have already also indicated that combined capacity for Ambuja and ACC because of swaps between the two companies, we will be more than adequately making up on market share. So would it be possible for you to provide some color over here? That's a related question. And I have one more question on ESG. Thank you.
I think, it was announced that we need not, so we have to limit the question. I will just take the answer to this question. I would rather not comment on this question in this call. This is an ACC earnings call.
Yeah.
You can park it for the call with Ambuja when it happens. So maybe we can move to the next speaker.
Sure. Thanks.
Thank you. Next question is from the line of Prateek Kumar from Antique Stock Broking. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. Good afternoon, sir. My first question is on this impairment which we have taken at Madhupuri plant. Given we have like some of the other plants which are probably similarly old or more older than this plant, so is this some incentive which can this impairment which hypothetically can come under other plants also?
So Prateek, I would not want to answer a hypothetical question as you rightly use the word. Every asset in the balance sheet is evaluated by the accountants, regularly, and we will not be speculating on what may or may not happen. So let's close it at that, Prateek.
Sure. Just a small question on a related question earlier. Our utilization which we report in our presentation is 72%, which you also talked about in our opening remarks. 25.5 million ton gives us a 77% utilization on a 33 million ton capacity. So is the difference is the MSA volume?
Sorry, come again, Prateek, with your question.
So in our presentation, we have given utilizations as 72%, which we also talked about in opening remarks. At 25.5 million ton volume for the year in CY20, we get a 77% utilization on a 33 million ton capacity.
The number that you've written is more of an annual reflection. I think you're calculating the quarter numbers, right?
No.
Yeah. I'm calculating annual only. So annual number 25.5.
Yeah, the difference is MSA. Yeah, that's correct.
Right. So over next 1.5 years till Ametha comes. So we have a 1.4 million ton grinding Sindri capacity for growth, as well as this MSA volume for growth, right?
That's right.
Right. Thanks, sir. I'll get back.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pratik.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will take our last question now, which is from the line of Sumangal Nevatia from Kotak Securities. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for the chance. I'm just left with one or two bookkeeping questions. Is it possible to share what is the WHRS timeline at Jammun and Kaimur?
So I believe, let me know, but I think we should be able to do it in about 10 to 11 months, give or take a month here and there.
Okay, got it. And so is it possible to share, say in CY20, what is the mix of power in terms of grid, TPP and alternate fuel? And how do we see this changing over the next, say, 5 years or 3 to 5 years?
So over the next few years, you will certainly see a shift towards green energy, whether it's in WHRS or solar or alternate forms of energy. Right now, I'm not in a position to share with you what our plan for next year is.
But sir, for CY20, is it possible to share the mix?
Last year?
Yeah.
We can get back to you
on that.
No worries. Thank you and all the best, sir.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, that was our last question for today. I now hand the conference over to Mr. Kripal Maniar for closing remarks. Over to you, sir.
Thanks, Syed. On behalf of ICICI Securities, we would like to thank the management of ACC Limited for providing us this opportunity to host the call, and thanks all the participants for joining the call. Thank you very much.